Hydro and the city are facing difficult financial decisions. And this, of course, is going to end up meaning that the residents of Ottawa are going to pay higher property taxes because of the failure of this provincial government to support the city. So in an affordability crisis, as a result of inaction from this government, every resident in the city of Ottawa is going to end up paying higher property taxes as a result. So it's clear that climate change is real. I even think I heard the member from Brampton over there agree that it was real. It's clear that the government needs to do something about it. It's also clear that to date, at least in the city of Ottawa, they haven't really been there to support residents or the city or the hydro company in their efforts to deal with the costs of these disasters and help reduce the burden on families. But at the same time, Madam Speaker, as we're dealing with this existential threat as a result of climate change, we are, as a society, as a community, going through what is, I think, widely understood to be a comprehensive affordability crisis. Families are having trouble paying the bills. They're having trouble paying rent. They're having trouble making their mortgage payments. They're having trouble putting food on the table for their families. More and more families are using the food bank, not just in our biggest cities, Madam Speaker, but in most communities across the province, food bank usage is up. That means parents are having to make the difficult decision every morning on whether their kids get breakfast before they go to school. I heard of one family where there were 3 or 4 or 5 kids in the household, and it was clear, the teacher relayed this to me, it was clear that the family was needing to make a decision as to which children got to bring lunch to school. The oldest boy in the family was going to school without a lunch so that his younger brothers and sisters could go to school with a lunch. And those are the kinds of decisions that families are being forced to make as a result of the affordability crisis that we're in. And the government has had an opportunity to respond. They introduced an economic update to the province's finances 2 weeks ago, or a week and a half ago. And there was virtually nothing in there to support middle-class families. In an economic crisis, when the costs of living are up, almost virtually zero support for middle-class families. And so families are sitting back and asking themselves, after 5 years, are we better off? After 5 years, are we better off? And when you look at it, Madam Speaker, after 5 years, the cost of groceries in Ontario is up. After 5 years, the cost of hydro is up. After 5 years, the cost of basically all living expenses is up. And at the same time, Madam Speaker, as the costs of living your life in Ontario are up, this government's actions have led to supports for the middle class going down, supports for our cities going down, supports for public transit going down. In fact, Madam Speaker, this week, the City of Ottawa, our hometown, because of the lack of support from this province, is making drastic cuts to public transit service in Ottawa. The city budgeted for an enhancement of public transit supports from this government. It was baked into their budget last year, largely based on the rhetoric of the Premier and others in the government, that they would be there for cities. Don't worry, they would be there for cities, Madam Speaker, and public transit is their most important priority. The check was never written to the City of Ottawa, Madam Speaker. The money never came. And as a result, City Council is debating reducing public transit service in the City of Ottawa by the tune of tens of millions of dollars. And of course, Madam Speaker, if public transit usage goes down and support for public transit goes down, it's very likely that greenhouse gas emissions will go up. And it will have an even worse impact on the challenge we're all trying to combat, which is the impact of climate change. So as the government talks a good game, they talk a good game about their desire to combat climate change and their investments to do so, in real terms, in terms of support for families, they really haven't delivered the goods. They've asked other governments to deliver the goods, but they themselves have not delivered the goods. And that's why, Madam Speaker, at this time I'd like to introduce an amendment to the motion. I move that this motion be amended by removing everything after the word should and inserting, in conjunction with the Government of Ontario, remove the harmonized sales tax on fuels and inputs from home heating.
Thank you. Mr. Blair has moved that this motion be amended by removing everything after should and inserting, in conjunction with the Government of Ontario, remove the harmonized sales tax on fuels and inputs for home heating. The member for Orleans may continue.
So we know that HST is a tax that we see in real life, in real time, all the time. When we get if you heat your home with electricity, when you get your hydro bill, you see the HST right there. You know exactly how much HST you're going to pay when you pay your bill. When your natural gas bill comes, you see exactly how much HST you're going to pay on natural gas. If you heat your home with propane, you see exactly how much HST you're going to pay on propane. And I suppose there are some who use outdoor wood furnaces still, or a wood stove in the home. I'm hoping that if you're buying cords of wood from someone in town, that you're seeing how much HST you're paying on the wood you're buying. And so, Madam Speaker, by the Government of Ontario removing HST from the sources of home heating fuel and working with the Government of Canada to have that portion of HST removed from home heating fuel as well, this will lead to a direct and visible and countable savings for families. Every month when they pay their gas bill or their electricity bill or for propane delivery, they're going to know exactly how much money they and their family are saving on HST to heat their homes as a direct result of actions of this legislature and this government. Not simply writing a letter hoping that another government takes action, but taking action themselves to provide real relief for families. It's time, Madam Speaker, given the environmental and climate crisis that we're in, given the affordability crisis that we're in, that everyone, but especially this government, takes off its ideological blinders and opens itself to the entire view of the situation. Every dollar will count, Madam Speaker. If we can save families $15, $20, $25, $30 a month on HST for their home heating, that could be the difference between putting Johnny or Jane in soccer next spring. That could be the difference between ensuring Johnny or Jane has breakfast before going to school in the morning. That might be the difference, Madam Speaker, so that that boy that I was talking about before doesn't have to go without a lunch to ensure that his younger brother and sisters go to school with one, that family will have the money to buy him a sandwich or a Lunchable to take to school for lunch, Madam Speaker. This is the kind of small, incremental savings that the government has direct action, direct responsibility for. They can provide this direct impact to families, and they can do it relatively quickly. They can do it relatively quickly. We can debate this motion today, which we're doing. We can pass it. There's a fall economic statement. There's a bill there. That bill is going to go to committee. This could be a quick amendment at committee. I'm sure it would have unanimous support from all parties to take the HST off of home heating. I don't think that any political party in Ontario could possibly oppose taking the HST off of home heating during an economic crisis, during an affordability crisis, as the snow is falling, Madam Speaker, as temperatures are dropping. There's no one in their right mind who could possibly refuse the idea of taking sales tax off of the cost of heating your home in the winter, Madam Speaker. And so these are actions that the government can take. They can take them today. They can take them tomorrow. We could have this thing wrapped up by the middle of next week, providing real relief for families before the holidays, before Christmas, more money in their pocket for them to support their families. We'll see if the government and if the New Democrats decide to support this common sense approach to providing real relief for families. Now, as it relates to the carbon tax more specifically, what's clear is that recent actions from the Government of Canada have created a division within our country, a division that provides the appearance that one area of the country is receiving a benefit that is not being received by all other parts of the country. And this is creating a wedge and a division. And of course, I support the elimination of that wedge and division and would happily support the removal of the carbon tax from all sources of home heating. And I've relayed that concern and that position to my Member of Parliament. But the point of my amendment, Madam Speaker, and the point of all of us getting elected here is not so that we can simply ask other elected officials to do work. It's not, we didn't ask to get elected so we can ask other people to take action to help our constituents. We asked our constituents to vote for us so that we could take action, so that we could propose ideas, so that we could get things done within our purview to deliver benefit to them and to their families. And the HST is a way in which the Government of Ontario can take real and direct and concrete action on the sources of heat and the energy bills that Ontarians are facing, especially as we approach winter and the holidays, Madam Speaker. It is my sincere hope that all parties in this House will take off their ideological blinders and do the right thing and help families save money on their utility bills as we head into winter and the holiday season. Thanks very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Further debate? The member for Renfrew, Nipissing, Cranbrook.
Thank you, Speaker, and I want to thank the members earlier. And I do want to begin by thanking my colleague, Mr. Jordan from Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston, for his motion, which is so appropriate for the world we're living in today and the cost of living issues we're dealing with today. I mean, every day you hear about things on the news, so I want to thank him for bringing forward. But I also want to thank my colleague for sitting here in this House and joining our team here, and what a tremendous contribution he's already making here in the province of Ontario and in his community. And I want to say, as the parliamentary assistant to long-term care, how important his contribution has been, because his experience in the healthcare field has been tremendously helpful to me personally, quite frankly, in our quest to bring improvements to long-term care in our communities. And I want to thank my friend Mr. Jordan for his work in that regard. So on to the, I must say, I had the pleasure of sitting through the address by the member of the NDP, the energy critic and environment critic and many other things, and of course the member for Ottawa-Orleans. Ottawa-Orleans. And, you know, the member for Danforth made a reference to bananas. And my God, how appropriate to that when I have to listen to the members on the opposite side and the way that they try to bring together what they think is logic. I think of bananas. And we all know what bananas is a connotation for. But I really want to talk about the policy today, or the emotion today, and the absolute hypocrisy of the federal Liberals and the Prime Minister of Canada to bring forth a bill, a change, a regulatory change, that would remove the carbon tax from a portion of the people of Canada on home heating oil, on oil for home heating. Now, division. You don't want to talk about divide. Under the Constitution, any federal laws are to be applied equally across this country. So they get around it, I guess, some regulatory change, but any criminal code has to be applied equally across Canada. And the laws fall under the same category. So we are now deciding that on the whim of the Prime Minister, for political reasons and political reasons alone, that he is going to divide Canadians. And he's going to make Ontarians and the people in the other provinces, particularly from our point of view, Ontarians suffer a different fate. So, you see, the Prime Minister is spiraling down the toilet very quickly in the electoral sense. Spiraling down. Oh, you might want to check the polls, my friend from Waterloo. You might want to check how ineffective you people have been. How ineffective you people have been. But anyway, let's get back to the thing. I'll have the conversation with you later when you've had more sleep, maybe. So, Speaker, here we are talking about the Prime Minister he's absolutely tanking. And he's asking himself, is there a way that I can survive this crisis in the Liberal Party, which is dividing his own party, by the way, as well. So he is just self-destructing. You should read Rex Murphy's column on the carbon tax and Trudeau. So he's self-destructing on the issue of the carbon tax because he is so conflicted about what his actions are going to be. So now he's deciding that, you know what we're going to do? Where do we hold a significant majority of the seats? Atlantic Canada. Atlantic Canada. So we're going to remove the carbon tax from home heating fuel in Atlantic Canada for 3 years. But we're not going to do it across the rest of the country. Now you can, how duplicitous can you be? Than to actually say, we're going to look after these people, but we're going to make the other ones pay. That is as un-Canadian as you can possibly be. But that's Justin Trudeau for you. So it's hard to look at that and say, how can somebody have even come up with this other than for crass political reasons? Crass political reasons to divide the country in that way. And it is so frustrating for the rest of the premiers. And, you know, I got to tell you that it's probably our last winter, but we actually heat with oil in our home. But I'm going to have to make a choice because my oil tank is expiring and I've got to make a choice. So I expect this is the last, because I'm not going to put in another, wait for my oil furnace to get old and have to change it, and then maybe the insurance company won't even insure us because we're doing oil, and oil is on the way out. Oil is on the way out. So why are you now penalizing those people in Ontario? Not me, but what about somebody who just put a furnace in 3 years ago? You're penalizing them for heating with oil. And the other thing that is so hypocritical on the part of the federal government, oil is the highest emitter of any heating fuel. That's right. So here's this person who believes that his whole life is about, his whole political life since he became Prime Minister is about this carbon tax, and how me, Justin Trudeau, I'm going to save the world by bringing in this carbon tax, which has been so penalizing to the people of Canada. But now I'm quite prepared to remove that carbon tax, for a portion of the population if it works to my political advantage. Wow. So he believes in the carbon tax like this is the, as the opposition wants. This is the existential issue of our times. But if I need something to save seats in Atlantic Canada, I will remove the carbon tax. Could he not have thought of something else, like maybe we'll build some more new roads? Oh no, can't do that. We're going to remove the carbon tax on home heating and pit you against the rest of the country. Wow. It is nonsense. Like, it is absolute nonsense. And there's nobody nobody with an ounce of fairness and belief in equality that can support it. But I know, and even the provincial Liberal member who just spoke from Ottawa Orleans, he said he's going to support our motion. He's going to support our motion because even he sees the hypocrisy in it. He sees how wrong it is for the federal Liberals to be doing this.
He's the only one in his party to see.
And then, of course, he wants to and he wants to talk about some other things that can be done. I hope I have some time. But then we talk about the cost of living. And how does the carbon tax impact our cost of living? Every way, every day. So here recently we're having this conversation about restaurants and how they're struggling. Restaurants are struggling all across the country, and certainly there's more restaurants in Ontario than anywhere else. There's more people in Ontario than anywhere else in the country. And they say restaurants are struggling, and then you'll have the survey that says, well, it's food cost. Well, hello, but what do you think is driving up the cost of food? The carbon tax is driving up the cost of food, and we had that discussion not so long ago. But it's not just the cost of food that the carbon tax is driving up. It's driving up the cost of everything else. Right. So when people say, we're not going to the restaurants anymore, we can't afford to eat at the restaurants. Yes, the price of meals at a restaurant have gone up like everything else. We can't afford to eat at a restaurant. Why can't they afford to eat at a restaurant? Because they can't pay their heating bills. They're not worried that they can't pay their mortgage. They can't pay all of the other costs of living issues that have gone up so much. They're worried about everything, so they're not going to the restaurant, not just because the restaurant prices have gone up, because they're not going to the restaurant, period, because they can't afford their bills, period. And all you have to do is look at the news out there about how people are so afraid of whether they'll be able to meet their monthly obligations in the cost of living. And what is driving up the cost of living? The carbon tax is a huge component. And the parliamentary budget...
I am sorry. I need to interrupt the member because I would like to remind the member as well that there is also an amendment on the table that also needs to be debated. I understand like the full motion is under debate as well, but there is an amendment that needs to be considered as well. If you can turn your attention to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and I'm aware of the amendment. We won't be supporting it, and that's my debate on that amendment. Thank you very much. Appreciate you interrupting me to remind me of that. So let's get back to what I'm talking about, the cost of living and what is driving that up. And what is driving that up? It is significantly being driven up by the carbon tax. That's right. And it is not that complicated. All you have to do is ask yourself, what's the carbon tax accomplishing? And they can make all their dreams, they can live in their dream worlds all they want. But the carbon tax has been a bitter disappointment, a total failure from its implementation, because it has robbed people of their hard-earned pay and their hard-earned the money that they earn to provide for their families. It has taken that money out of their pockets and allowed the government to play its cute little games with their money, most of them political. But has it done anything to reduce our carbon footprint? No. Has it done anything to reduce our emissions? We're a failure, as my friend said. We're 58 out of 63 countries in the success of reducing our CO2 emissions. And we're just a small portion of the world. And in the meantime, we give China and India a free pass on emissions. But little old Canada, with our 40 million people, somehow, if we just tax our people to death with a carbon tax, we're going to solve all the problems. We're not going to solve the problem, but we're creating a tremendously difficult problem for families in this country and in this province by impacting them every day with the carbon tax. And of course, the federal government, they have this rebate program. You know, so every so often you get a rebate, but that doesn't do you any good when you pay the carbon tax every single time you go to a cash register and every single time you pay their heating bills. So I had a conversation with Sean Fitzgerald from McCarthy Fuels in Killaloo last week and how it's impacting them. And McCarthy saw the reality. I mean, they were a fuel oil distributor, and now they've branched into propane. Well, now, you know, when I drive by their yard, I see, most of the time if I drive, I see one oil truck, if I'm driving by on a weekend, one oil truck and 5 propane trucks sitting in their depot, because that's where we're going. So we're doing everything we can to convert to sources of heating that are cleaner. Propane is the cleanest of the three. If you look at heating, home heating oil, fuel oil, natural gas and propane, propane is the cleanest, but it's also the one that is most prominent in rural Ontario because we have an awful lot of places that natural gas hasn't gotten to. It's tremendously convenient, natural gas. You don't have tanks to fill up, all of those kinds of things. You don't have the truck delivering it, it's coming by pipe. But we don't have it in everywhere in rural Ontario. And they are just flabbergasted. Sean was just flabbergasted at the unfairness of this, that we're not going to extend this to other forms of home heating. Of course, the vast majority across the province, natural gas, but here in the Ottawa Valley, in my county of Renfrew County, many people on propane. So they do the things to be as conscious as possible about the impact of CO2, but they're penalized by this federal decision to simply remove the carbon tax from home heating fuels. And we're doing the things to help people with the cost of living. You know, one of the biggest things, and I see my colleague, the Minister of Economic Development, we've reduced business taxes in this province, taxes and burdens and fees, by $8 billion a year. Now, if those were still in place, that $8 billion would be passed on to the consumer. So when we reduce the cost of business by $8 billion, we're ultimately reducing the cost to the consumer, because business must pass those costs on or they won't be in business. It's as simple as that. That's just one thing that we're doing for the people of Ontario. We reduced the gas tax. We removed hundreds of thousands, maybe millions from the provincial tax roll completely, and they pay no provincial tax. And we took away the cost of licensed police speakers. We're doing the kinds of things, Speaker, because I know I'm going to get cut off here. We're doing the kinds of things here that reduce the cost of living, help families across Ontario, and the Government of Canada is doing the thing that does nothing to reduce the cost here in Ontario. All it does is divide Canadians on an issue that is so important. Who can live without heating your home? Anybody here? Can you live without heating your home? Well, Trudeau thinks he said.
Thank you very much. I hesitate to interrupt the member for Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke, but I'm compelled to by the standing orders. It's now 10:15 and time to commence member statements. Member statements. The member for Brampton West.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I'm honored to rise today to speak about two significant festivals that hold immense cultural and spiritual importance for millions around the world, Diwali and Bandi Chhor Divas. I would like to wish the people of Ontario that celebrated a very happy Diwali and Bandi Chhor Divas. Diwali, also known as the Festival of Lights, is celebrated by people of various cultures and religions. The festival spreads across many borders, Mr. Speaker. It symbolizes the victory of light over darkness and good over evil. Homes are lit up with divas and colorful rangolis. Diwali is also a time for reflection. Mr. Speaker, Bandi Chhor Divas is also celebrated on the same day, and it is a significant day for the Sikh community. It commemorates the day 6th Guru of Sikhs, Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji, and 52 kings were released from imprisonment. On Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji's return to Amritsar, the Golden Temple was lit up with lights, marking the festival's association with lights. Both Diwali and Bandi Chhor Divas underscore the themes of freedom, light, and the triumph of good over evil. May the lights of Diwali and the spirit of Bandi Chhor Divas fill our lives with joy and guide us towards a future filled with hope and harmony. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Member statements. The member for Ottawa Centre.
Thank you, Speaker. Last Friday, I sat in the gym of Lady Evelyn Public School with my friends Wanda and Robin from the local Legion, as we remembered the sacrifices of veterans, the children sang, "Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me." Those are powerful words. But in Gaza right now, Speaker, peace seems impossible. Babies in intensive care clinging to life, mass graves being dug at Al-Shifa Hospital. Meanwhile, some are taking this moment to call for more violence. But then I think about Vivian Silver, Speaker, a Canadian-Israeli peace activist who we lost on October 7th. Vivian spent every day of her life working for peace. She helped sick Palestinians go to Israeli hospitals. She demanded her whole life a political solution to decades of suffering and military occupations. And like her, we must also persevere. We have to organize for peace, even if some people call us haters. We should demand a ceasefire for the release of all hostages and for the investigation of all war crimes. History will not be kind, Speaker, to those in this moment who acted in vengeance. History will remember people like Vivian Silver, like the Palestinian families I've met at home who in their grief have spoken out about the family members they have lost and have built a peace movement that must continue in this country. Let there be peace on earth, Speaker, and let us all have the courage to fight for it.
Thank you very much. Member statements. The member for Glengarry, Prescott Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to start by thanking everyone who participated to the many Remembrance Day ceremonies across Glengarry, Prescott Russell in the last few weeks. Thanks to the organization for organizing these ceremonies. Thanks to the Legions, the cadets, and all the people involved in organizing these Remembrance Day events year after year. And let's make sure that we do our best to gather every year for many generations to come to remember the sacrifices of these men and women who fought for our liberty.
On another note, I'd like to also congratulate the organizations and the businesses that contributed to the Hawkesbury Expo that took place on the 11th and 12th of November last weekend. The first of its kind at the sports complex in Hawkesbury. I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce of Hawkesbury. It was a great opportunity to meet people in the region and to create relationships with a number of businesses and to continue conversations and to continue to speak about the priorities of Glengarry Prescott Russell. It's a very important opportunity for me as their member here in this House. And it's very important for us as a government, and we continue to listen to Ontarians throughout the province. Thank you.
Member statements. The member for Toronto Danforth.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, it came out just the other day that this government is paying substantial bonuses to private clinics for surgery that is done in public hospitals. It was revealed that the payments to the Don Mills Surgical Unit, part of the ClearPoint Health Network, is getting paid almost double the amount that public hospitals get paid for cataract surgery, but double the amount for knee surgery. Speaker, this government is engaged on a straightforward project of privatizing our healthcare system. That project is one which will result in less medical care for people, which will result ultimately in people being able to pay for their surgery and health care if they have the money and have to go without if they don't. It is a disastrous course of action. I call on the government to end the privatization of our healthcare system, to stop paying bonuses to private clinics, and to actually protect the health care of the people of this province. Thank you, Speaker.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Member statements. The member for Peterborough, Kawartha.
Thank you, Speaker. I want to take a moment today to talk about a great initiative that was started by a couple of friends of mine. During COVID, Lois Tuffin watched as a number of volunteer organizations saw a huge decline in the number of people willing to volunteer, while simultaneously having people reach out to her and ask her if she knew of places they could volunteer to help the community. So she enlisted a few other powerhouse people in our area, like Sarah Budd from the Chamber of Commerce, and came up with the idea of Volunteer Peterborough. It's like a dating app for volunteers and volunteer organizations. Since launching in July, Volunteer Peterborough has signed up more than 400 volunteers eager to connect with a cause, and more than 90 organizations looking for that perfect match. VolunteerPeterborough.ca basically works like a dating or job hunting site. It matches people's interests, skills, and time with organizations that are looking for helpers. You can sign up for the newsletter and stay up to date on volunteer opportunities and learn more, or you can jump right in and go through the opportunities that are already available. Whether it's an hour a day, an hour a week, or an hour a month, if you're looking to make a difference in Peterborough, look to www.volunteerpeterborough.ca. Of course, if you're an organization that needs volunteers, VolunteerPeterborough.ca is also the place for you to go to find eager volunteers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Member statements. The member for Parkdale High Park.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to discuss a problem that all of us see daily. In fact, when we walk out of the Legislature, we cannot walk more than 100 meters in any direction without seeing an unhoused person. Some are in tents, some are not, some have covers on, some don't. In the park that is right across the street, there is a tent. This is right under our nose. There are an estimated 10,000 homeless people in Toronto alone. Now multiply that in every city, every region across this province. Does this Conservative government not see that we have a major problem? Municipalities see it. That's why they're declaring state of emergencies on homelessness. But there's only so much they can do. This is a province-wide issue, and the province must do something as well. Winter is here. The shelter system is going to be overloaded. We know it because it happens every year. Where are the homeless people supposed to go? Where are they supposed to sleep? In the subways? In ATM vestibules? In front of small businesses? In parks and playgrounds? So I'm urging this government, take this issue seriously. Everyone is impacted by it. Declare a state of emergency on homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member statements. The member for Markham Unionville.
Thank you, Speaker. This June, I took the initiative to propose a motion requesting the Ministry of Public and Business Service Delivery to conduct a comprehensive investigation into the issue of Notice of Security Interest, aka NOSIS, and report its findings to the House by the end of this year. I am pleased that this motion garnered support and was passed by the House. Recently, I am delighted to see the Ministry is conducting a public consultation on the issues to address the harmful and inappropriate use of NOSIS. The issues of NOSIS has been extensively covered by the media, shedding light on the challenges faced by unsuspecting homeowners. Regrettably, homeowners in Markham Unionville are no exceptions to these difficulties. A NOSIS services as a registration on the land registry system. It notifies third parties of a lender or lessors invest in a fixture on the land. While NOSIS plays a crucial role in business landscape, they can unfortunately lead to disputes. Some unscrupulous businesses have exploited NOSIS as leverage when consumers attempt to sell their homes or seek refinance their properties. These tactics can place an unfair burden on consumers. Consumers are forced to pay excessive amounts or engage in costly, time-consuming legal battles to have the NOSIS discharged. This Ministry's engagement with the public and stakeholders underscore the government's unwavering commitment to create a fair and just marketplace for consumers and businesses. I truly appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Member statements. The member for Don Valley West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every day in this province, people are struggling to pay rent and put food on the table. In my riding of Don Valley West, residents in Thorncliffe Park are resorting to rent strikes because they're facing repeated years of above-guideline rent increases. Take John, a veteran on disability facing a 12% increase, who said, "My pension does not increase by 12% each year." Joe has called the Premier and the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing to ask them to do something to limit rent increases for those on disability and pensions. Like John, I anxiously await their response. Speaker, building new housing that's affordable is part of the solution. But what is the government doing now for people like John and tenants in Thorncliffe Park who are struggling with $300 a month rent increases because the government removed rent control in 2018? We know the government thought that allowing a few developers to make $8.3 billion in windfall profits was a good idea. But now we need good ideas that help those struggling to pay rent and buy food. As Steve Pomeroy, a prof at McMaster's Housing Evidence Collaborative, said recently to CBC, an ideal approach would limit the volatility of rent increases for non-rent controlled units while ensuring new projects still make financial sense for developers. Speaker, it's time for the government to take the affordability crisis seriously and take serious action to help people who are choosing between paying rent and buying food. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next member statement, the member for Oakville.
Thank you, Speaker. The Shifa Gala 2023 is just around the corner, and I'm genuinely excited by what we're going to accomplish together for our Oakville Trafalgar Memorial Hospital. This event is more than just a night out. It's a community coming together for a cause that touches all of us, the health and well-being of our town. A heartfelt thank goes out to Raza Hassan and every member of our local Oakville Muslim community for their commitment to local health care. Seeing the people of Oakville unite to support our hospital is truly inspiring. Having access to top-tier medical care right here in Oakville is essential, and your contributions are making a difference. Let me express my sincere gratitude to the healthcare heroes at Oakville Trafalgar Memorial Hospital. Your dedication and tireless service have not gone unnoticed. You are the cornerstone of our community, and your relentless commitment to care is what propels us forward. Every contribution matters. The essential medical equipment for our hospital relies on entirely from community support. So let's come together to make this event memorable and one to have a lasting impact on our families and neighbours. Mark Sunday, November 19th, 2023 on your calendars for the Oakville Legacy Banquet. This year is about action. It's about ensuring our hospital continues to serve our community at the highest level. I look forward to seeing everyone there.
Great.
Thank you. Member statements. The member for Oakville North, Burlington.
Thank you, Speaker. Last month, during Small Business Week and Manufacturing Month, I had the pleasure of visiting Rapid Dose Therapeutics and Root Tree, two stellar examples of made-in-Ontario innovation in my community of Oakville North Burlington. Rapid Dose Therapeutics has developed a game-changing drug delivery system. Its patented oral thin film platform offers a unique delivery with a rapid absorption when placed in the mouth, eliminating the need for needles or swallowing pills. It also saves transportation costs and eliminates the need for deep freeze storage. Root Tree is spearheading a global movement to achieve a greener packaging identity that addresses all parts of the eco-friendly packaging life cycle. Already recognized as an industry leader for its sustainable packaging and product co-packing, the company is a shining example, unafraid to dream big and keep innovating. Root Tree is also conducting research into how to use waste cooking oil as an alternative feedstock, further building on its innovative solutions for reducing waste. Please join me in celebrating these two Made in Ontario, Made in Burlington success stories. Thank you, Speaker.
Good. Thank you. That concludes our member statements for this morning. Introduction of visitors. The member for Timiskaming Cochrane.
Thank you, Speaker. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce my granddaughter, Lena, and her loving mom, Noelle Clement.
Introduction of visitors, the member for Thunder Bay Atikokan.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to introduce 4 members from Thunder Bay that are in the House with us today. Kelsey Hookstein and Katrina Hill from the Lakehead Nurse Practitioner-led Clinic, as well as Sean Harrison and Matthew Sombrodsky from the Thunder Bay Police Services. Welcome to your House.
The member for London North Centre.
Thank you, Speaker. As a former teacher librarian, it's my great pleasure to welcome members from the Ontario Library Association as well as the Ontario School Library Association for their Library Days at Queen's Park. Michael Ciccone, CEO and Chief Librarian at the London Public Library, Wendy Birch-Jones, the Vice President of OSLA and with the Toronto District School Board, Johanna Gibson-Lawler, the President of OSLA and with the Greater Essex School Board, as well as Sarah Weisler, who is the Chief Librarian and Executive Officer at Ajax Public Library. Welcome to Queen's Park.
Thank you. The member for Guelph.
It's an honour to rise today and welcome all members of the Police Association of Ontario to Queen's Park today. I'd like to give a special shout out to PAO President Mark Baxter and former Guelph PAO President Matt Jotham, who are over in the gallery. Welcome to Queen's Park.
The member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes.
Thanks, Speaker. Good morning. I too had a meeting this morning with the Police Association of Ontario, and I want to welcome to the members East Gallery Patty Murphy and Jeff Hepburn from the Brockville Police Association and Tyler Brett from the Smiths Falls Police Association. Welcome to Queen's Park.
The member for Hamilton Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, I would also like to welcome the Police Association. I had a meeting this morning with the Hamilton Police Association, President Jamie Bannon, Jason Leake, and Wes Wilson. Welcome to Queen's Park.
The member for Thornhill.
Speaker, it is my very great honour to also welcome from the Ontario Federation of Ontario Public Libraries and from Vaughan, Margie Singleton, Rebecca Hunt, Dina Marie Ragunti-Stevens. It's also my pleasure to introduce Melanie Mills, Caroline Goulding, and Nathan Etherington, all from the Ontario Library Association visiting us today.
Member for Sudbury.
I would like to also recognize the Police Association for coming here, in particular Matt Hall, Jacques Roberge, Minoru Giano Francesco, and Steve Train from the Sudbury Police Association. Speaker. Thank you.
Member for Ottawa Vanier.
Thank you, Speaker. It's a great pleasure to introduce very dear friends of mine and colleagues, Linda Savard and Alexander Maurice, who are here at Queen's Park for the first time.
Member for Carleton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd also like to welcome everyone from the Ontario Police Association, specifically from the Ottawa Police Association, President Matthew Cox, and Directors Barmak Anvari, Jim Irvine, and Devin Archer. Welcome to Queen's Park. Thank you.
Member for Waterloo.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I'd like to welcome Tim Reparin, who's the Vice President at the Waterloo Region Police Association, Mark Eggers, the President of Waterloo Region Police Association, Teresa Dawson, the Civilian Director, Waterloo Regional Police Association, and I genuinely look forward to our meeting later on today.
The member for Beaches East York.
Very much, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, everyone. Great to be back with you. I'd also like to introduce the Ontario Library Association and the Federation of Ontario Public Libraries. And I know we're all big bookworms here, and members who are here who weren't mentioned yet, I believe, are David Harvey, Joanna Gibson-Lawler, Wendy Birch-Jones, Christine Rowe, and an amazing City Councillor, and my colleague, Councillor Paul Ainsley. Thank you.
The Solicitor General.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. In addition to welcoming the PAO and under the leadership of Mark Baxter, I also want to acknowledge the representatives from the Ontario Police OPP Association, led by John Cerasolo and Rob Jameson and Mike Adair, but also two very special ladies, Mr. Speaker, Shelley Atkinson and Brenda Orr from the Survivors of Law Enforcement Canada. Your voices have helped our province find our way. Welcome to the Legislature.
Unless there's an objection, I'd like to continue with introduction of visitors. Member for Sudbury.
Thank you, Speaker. I believe they're behind me or on their way up from the press conference that MPP Legion Vaudois had this morning, advocating for workers' rights. Sandy Kennart from ODRA is here. Eric Jonquière, who came from Belgium from ABEVA. Carol Moore from Oniwig, and Sherry Scarpelli are joining us today, Speaker. Welcome to your House.
Introduction of visitors. The member for Newmarket, Aurora.
Thank you, Speaker. I would like to introduce the over 50 nurse practitioners here for the Nurse Practitioner of Ontario Advocacy Day, including their president, Barbara Bailey. As well, I am pleased to introduce members of the Canadian Cancer Survivor Network, who are here today for a lunch reception to mark the Lung Cancer Awareness Month in Canada as part of the Right to Survive Coalition, and including a welcome to President and CEO Jackie Manthorn. Thank you.
Member for Oshawa.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and I'm also pleased to welcome the Police Association here to Queen's Park, and I'm looking forward to my meeting with the folks from the DRPA, Daryl Rice, Keith Aubry, and Tim Morrison. Welcome to Queen's Park.
Member for Don Valley East.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. On this morning, I would like to welcome the Nurse Practitioners Association of Ontario and my friend, Crystal Fox. I'd also like to welcome the Canadian Cancer Survivor Network, Lung Cancer Canada, and the Lung Health Foundation, specifically Jessica Buckley, the CEO, Jess Rogers, VP of Programs, Research and Public Affairs, and also Riley Sanders, Manager of Public Affairs. Thank you and welcome to Queen's Park.
Brantford Grant.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to sincerely welcome Chris Reed from the Brantford Police Service Association. It's great to have you in your house.
Member for Windsor West.
Thank you, Speaker, and it's my pleasure to welcome from the Police Association of Ontario Rick Dearest, Pete Mumborket, and Mike Pradaway, who I've been told his sister Martha is like the best sister in the entire world. And I'd also like to welcome Ontario Library Association and Federation of Ontario Public Libraries, folks who I'll be meeting with later today, more specifically their president, Joanna Gibson-Lawler, who is with the Greater Essex County District School Board back in my hometown.
Member for Windsor-Tecumseh.
Thank you, Speaker. I've got a few guests I'd like to acknowledge today. First is actually just following the member for Windsor West, Kent Rice, the Windsor Police Association, who's here, and also from the survivors of law enforcement from Windsor, Shelley Atkinson, as well as another founding member, Brenda Orr. So welcome to Queen's Park.
The member for St. Catharines.
Good morning. I would like to welcome we have several individuals from the Police Association, Adam Kitston, Colin Campbell, Derek Watson, and there's a couple others that I missed, but I'm sorry, I apologize. I also would like to introduce Willie Knowles from my St. Catharines Riding Association, representing injured workers from Niagara. Thank you, and welcome to
the Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, adding to the welcome for the Police Association of Ontario, the Barrie Police Association in particular, John Brooks and Patrick Brouillard.
The member for London West.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I am looking forward to my meeting later today with members of the London Police Association. I want to welcome Gary Bezaire, Kyle Tedball, and Ozzie Nethersole, who are with us today at Queen's Park. Thank you.
The member for Richmond Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to welcome the Police Association of Ontario for visiting Queen's Park, and I also like to welcome Conrad Emerson, Heath Miller, and Jurette Thomas from Richmond Hill, and I look forward to our meeting later. Thank you.
And the member for Nickel Belt.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm pleased to welcome members of the Lung Cancer Canada here today, part of the Right to Survive Coalition. They are Winky Yao, as well as Julia Kulselski. I'm also pleased to welcome the Nurse Practitioner Associations of Ontario and my good friend Jennifer Clement, and of course the Sudbury Police Associations that are here, Jacques Roberge, Steve Train, Mauro Gianfrancesco, and Matt Hall. Welcome to Queen's Park. Welcome to your house.
The member for Burlington.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to welcome Ellie Bale, President of the Halton Regional Police Association. Welcome to Queen's Park.
Introduction of visitors. The member for Scarborough Southwest.
Much, Speaker. I would also like to welcome members that I'm really looking forward to meeting this afternoon from the Police Association of Ontario, and Brennan Walsh and Jim Mulligan. Welcome to the House.
The member for Windsor-Tecumseh, the last one.
Thank you, Speaker. With sincere regrets, I missed two from the Windsor Police Service who are here, Kate Mitchell and Dave Callum. Welcome to Queen's Park.
Concludes our introduction of visitors for this morning. It is my privilege and honour to inform the House that we have a new group of legislative pages, and I would like to ask them to assemble for their introductions. We all set? From the riding of Sarnia-Lambton, Mohammed Mustafa Arif. From the riding of Brampton West, Jesse Ashraf. From the riding of Cambridge, Shahan Awan. From the riding of Canada Carleton, Elliot Bernier. From the riding of York Simcoe, Brooke Cake. From the riding of King Vaughan, Angela D. Donato. From the riding of Don Valley West, Harris Ilili. From the riding of Ottawa Centre, Emma Forster. From the riding of Mississauga Erin Mills, Scarlett Howe. From the riding of Hastings, Lennox and Addington, Henry Hassler. From the riding of Barrie Springwater, Oro Medante, Chloe Hasberger. From the riding of University Rosedale, Leo Kamini Waldlinger. From the riding of Kingston and the Islands, Peter Melligrana. From the riding of Scarborough Guildwood, Kia Patel. From the riding of London Fanshawe, Effie Scott. From the riding of Etobicoke Centre, Walter Martel Spracklin. From the riding of Haldeman, Norfolk, Fuegap Tegomo Gapi. From the riding of Don Valley North, Alina Wu. And from the riding of Eglinton Lawrence, Angela Yuya. Welcome to the Legislature. We're delighted to have you here. Thank you very much. And the member for Scarborough-Guildwood has a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I seek unanimous consent that, notwithstanding Standing Order 45B4, the time for debate on Opposition Day Motion Number 4 regarding two-way GO rail service along the Kitchener-GO corridor be apportioned as follows: 56 minutes to each of the recognized parties and 8 minutes to the independent members as a group.
Members seeking unanimous consent that, notwithstanding Standing Order 45B4, the time for debate on Opposition Day Motion Number 4 be apportioned as follows: 56 members to each of the recognized parties and 8 minutes to the independent members as a group. Agreed? No. I heard a no. It is now time for oral questions. I recognize the Leader of His Majesty's Loyal Opposition.
Good morning, Speaker. My question is for the Premier. Speaker, the Premier has been caught repeatedly using his personal phone to conduct government business contrary to guidelines. This appears to be a way to avoid freedom of information disclosures. And it seems that this culture of non-compliance has evidently spread to other ministers. Global News found the ministers for Education, Finance, Health, Housing and Transportation either never or rarely made calls on their government-issued phones during crucial moments when key and very controversial government decisions were being made. So, Speaker, to the Premier, is it standard practice for ministers to avoid accountability in this way?
And to reply, the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Look, Mr. Speaker. It's early. Yes. Look, Mr. Speaker, ministers and the Premier, of course, follow all the rules as set out by Integrity Commissioner and the Information Commissioner, Mr. Speaker. But at the same time, look, the ministers and the caucus members on this government have been very, very accountable to the people of the province of Ontario, and that is why we won a massive majority from the people in the last election, Mr. Speaker. That is why the ranks of the Progressive Conservative caucus have grown, and primarily it's because we have been focused on what matters to the people of the province of Ontario, building more homes, improving the economy, groundbreaking legislation that has seen us bring over $27 billion worth of investments to the province of Ontario at a time when the rest of the world was being challenged. Ontario was thriving, Mr. Speaker. That is a level of accountability I will take each and every day, and it is why the people of the province of Ontario have supported us in larger numbers, election after election.
Hear, hear. A supplementary question.
Speaker, the Minister of Health didn't make a single call on her government-issued phone in January this year. That's odd because that month the minister was preparing to open up the public health care system to private, for-profit surgical clinics. You'd think she'd been on the phone constantly. Indeed, you see, because of those sweeping changes, a for-profit clinic owned by ClearPoint now gets paid more than twice what a public hospital gets paid for common surgical procedures. Wow. So, Speaker, back to the Premier. Did the Minister of Health discuss these changes in advance with Christine Elliott, her predecessor as Health Minister and now a lobbyist for ClearPoint?
Speaker, what an odd line of questioning from the Leader of the Opposition, right? She's searching out when people are using their phones. I'll tell you what the Minister of Health is doing, like every other minister of the government. We're not contemplating, like, how many times did I turn my phone on each and every day. There are other ways of communicating. You know, my iPad, actually, I can text message on my iPad. But here's an innovation. Here's a massive innovation that has never obviously occurred to the NDP. It's called looking at somebody across the table and saying, what is the advice that you have for me? It's about bringing people in and talking to them, right? Now, I know they don't like to do that over there, right? They don't like to do that over there because when they talk to each other, they divide, Mr. Speaker. So the less they talk, the better it is for the NDP. But in this caucus, Progressive Conservatives, we enjoy each other. We enjoy the public, and that is why the public has put their confidence in us. That's why businesses are coming back and investment is increased.
The final supplementary.
Speaker, thank you, Speaker. The former Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing made only 20 minutes of calls using his government-issued phone last November. Now, think back, Speaker. This was the month the minister announced changes to the Greenbelt, as well as the forced expansions of the urban boundaries of Hamilton, York, Peel, Ottawa, and other municipalities. There is evidence the government gave preferential treatment to the favoured speculators who benefited from these changes. So, to the Premier, did the minister stay off his government-issued phone to avoid leaving a record of who he was talking to?
Members will take their seats. Government House Leader.
Alrighty. That's a standing ovation from the NDP, right? Honestly, Speaker, I hope my daughters aren't watching this today because I fight with them to stay off the phone all the time. I tell them, you know what you can do? Talk to people. Talk to people. Use Zoom. Zoom if you want to see somebody face-to-face. Invite them in. Have roundtables. I know the Minister of Finance and the Parliamentary assistants are crisscrossing the province doing, you know what? Not talking to people on a phone. They're meeting face-to-face, getting ideas on what we should have in the next budget. That is what this caucus is doing. We do it all the time. My gosh, I know the Minister of Agriculture and a number of caucus members were at the Royal Agricultural Winter Fair. You know what they were doing? Talking to people about the great things that are coming. We're in a chamber that does what? Talks to each other, Mr. Speaker. So I would suggest to the Leader of the Opposition, I know that their party is based on the principles of 1933, but the modern age has many other ways of communicating, not just the old technology that is a phone.
Order. Thank you. The next question, once again, the Leader of the Opposition.
Clear this government. Speaker, it's pretty clear this government will try absolutely anything to avoid accountability, but they can't hide forever. Speaker, the RCMP has started their investigation into this government's shady Greenbelt grab. The unit that's handling this case, it's called the Sensitive and International Investigations Unit, is responsible for high-risk matters that cause significant threats to Canada's political, economic and social integrity. My question is for the Premier. Has the Premier or anyone in his staff been in contact with the RCMP regarding the investigation into the Greenbelt grab?
Mr. Municipal Affairs and Housing.
As I've said right from day one, we will work with the RCMP or the Information and Privacy Commissioner, the Integrity Commissioner. We will assist them in their investigation, Mr. Speaker. The Premier has also been very clear that we would do that, and we will continue to do that. But make no mistake, Mr. Speaker, we will not be sidetracked from what our mission is, and the mission is to build 1.5 million homes for the people of the province of Ontario. Right? Our mission is to get people out of their parents' basement and into their first home, Mr. Speaker. Our mission is to ensure that people who graduate from college, university, who are going into the trades, having their first job, can enjoy the same dreams that almost every single one of us in this chamber have, the value and the dream of a home, Mr. Speaker, of their own. That is what we are focused on. We will not be sidetracked on that mission, despite the fact that the NDP and the Liberals worked so hard for 15 years to put obstacles in the way that the largest landmass in the country has a housing crisis, Mr. Speaker. We'll disentangle that. We'll get the homes built. We'll get people out of their parents' basement and into the homes that they deserve, Mr. Speaker.
The supplementary question.
So, Speaker, I guess they won't answer that question. Let's try another one. Speaker, earlier this month, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing confirmed that the RCMP has been in touch with his ministry. They are already sniffing around the Cabinet and other members of Government caucus who have deep connections to these land speculators. This scandal has already cost the government 2 Cabinet ministers and multiple staff members, not to mention a full year wasted on speculator-friendly policies that had to be reversed because they did not meet the needs of Ontarians. So my question is for the Premier. How many current or former Cabinet ministers or political staff have been contacted by the RCMP?
Members will take their seats. Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing.
Speaker, we'll let them do their job, and we'll work with them as they required, and we'll assist them in doing so, Mr. Speaker. But the Leader of the Opposition is correct about one thing. We are reversing a lot of the damage that was done by the Liberal and NDP coalition, right? We're having to do that. Now, listen, the NDP have a candidate in their current by-election. You know what she's known as? She's known as the Queen of NIMBY. You know why? Because she's turned down 1,174-unit development in downtown, another 10-story, 132 units in downtown, 532 residential units, which also was in downtown, which contained thousands of extra dollars for affordable housing. You know why she turned that down, the NDP candidate? Because it was too close to a pickleball court, Mr. Speaker. Now,
response?
I think I'm too young to play pickleball, Mr. Speaker, but I tell you what, this is the culture of the NDP. Turn down everything and then find an excuse. Blame it on the pickleballers. That's...
Thank you. The final supplementary.
Thank you, Speaker. The government members know they're in big trouble. And that's why they're trying so hard to change the channel, but they are out of time and their house of cards is falling. The Auditor General and the Integrity Commissioner reports expose rampant preferential treatment for donors and insiders of this government. The RCMP has even appointed a special prosecutor because of the scale of this government's dirty dealings. Speaker, to the Premier, what is it going to take for you and your government to come clean with the people of Ontario? My God.
I'm going to caution the Leader of the Opposition on the use of the expressions that she's using. I'm going to call upon the member for Renfrew-Nipissing Pembroke to please come to order, and I'll recognize the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing to reply.
Well, Mr. Speaker, my goodness, that was one heck of a question. Listen, I tell you what, we went to the people of the province of Ontario and we said we want to build more homes, and the people of the province of Ontario put their faith and confidence in us, and they increased the members of this party by, what I think, 10 historic levels of support for the party, because they wanted us to continue what we're doing, building more homes, building an economy that works for more people in the province of Ontario. The only party that is having trouble in this place, outside of the Van party, is the opposition leader's party, right? They can't even caucus together because every time they caucus together, they fight. I mean, this is a leader of the opposition who ran unopposed for the leadership of the party. You know why? Because nobody wanted to lead the party, Mr. Speaker. And that is why the people of the province of Ontario put their faith in progressive conservatives, because right from day one, it has been progressive conservatives who have built roads. It has been us who have built schools, colleges, universities. It is us who have built an economy that works for all people.
I'm going to call the member for Hamilton Mountain to order. The next question, the member for Nickel Belt.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is for the Premier.
CBC reported that privately owned Don Mills Surgical Suite was paid rate noticeably higher than what the province provides public hospital for the exact same procedure. This government paid $1,200 for cataract surgery at the for-profit clinic versus giving $500 for the same surgery in a public hospital. Even worse, the Ford government paid $4,000 for a meniscectomy in a for-profit clinic versus $1,200 in our public hospital. Can the Premier explain why he is willing to pay private clinic 240% to 333% more to private clinic than he pays to our public hospital for the exact same procedure?
Parliamentary Assistant to Minister of Health, member for Eglinton Lawrence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As announced last January, our government's expansion to further leverage community surgical and diagnostic centres was and has always been about finding capacity where there is capacity within our publicly funded healthcare system. Our government is taking action to deliver more publicly funded procedures to reduce wait times for people and to reduce the surgical backlog. And since 2020, our government has also invested nearly $1 billion through the Surgical Recovery Fund to open hospital operating rooms on weeknights and weekends, but we knew more could be done, and that is why we initiated 4 new cataract surgery clinics, and I'm very pleased to say they added 14,000 extra cataract surgeries this year, which means 14,000 grandmothers and grandfathers are able to get back to work, read to their grandchildren, and do other things that make life worthwhile.
Thank you. The supplementary question.
Well, Speaker, unlike public hospitals, which provide care based on our needs, the #1 goal of a private clinic is to make money. These clinics only accept clients that are easy. They send the riskier, the more complex, the more expensive patient back to the public hospital, yet our public hospitals have better outcomes. This government is making sure that Centric Health Corporation makes a lot of money off the back of sick people at the expense of taxpayers. Centric Health Corporation is a division of Kingston Capital Partner whose stated goal is, and I quote, to create top top-performing investment solutions for our investors. Does that speak of quality care? Can the Premier explain why he is paying 2 to 3 times the price to a private for-profit clinics whose goal is to provide top-performing investment solutions to their investors?
Members will please take their seats. And to reply once again, the member for Eglinton Lawrence.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. The member opposite has been here for many years. She's been a member in this legislature, and she knows that this government is actually funding hospitals and surgical clinics the way they have been funded for years. Frankly, we're making sure that we have more surgeries done for patients, but the member opposite is making an apples and oranges comparison. Hospitals receive funding through a budget for the entirety of their operations. Community surgical diagnostic clinics receive one-time funding for procedures only and have to take capital and operating costs out of that funding. These centres have higher costs because they're purchasing equipment or renting equipment in some cases because of their one-time funding. So all of this goes to make it a different apple and oranges comparison. Absolutely. But what we can tell you is more people are getting access to care faster, paid for with their OHIP card, and that's what people care about.
The next question, the member for Brantford-Brant.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Energy. Over the past few weeks, I have heard from many of my constituents who are deeply unhappy and very concerned about the impact of the carbon tax on their day-to-day lives. When the federal government forced the carbon tax on Ontario, hard-working families were slapped with a 14.3 cent per litre increase in the price of gas, costing them hundreds of dollars a year. As if that wasn't already expensive enough, the federal carbon tax is costing family more in grocery bills every month. The costs are passed on to the consumer when transportation, refrigeration, and electricity prices increase because of the carbon tax. Speaker, can the minister please explain how the federal carbon tax negatively impacts the people of Ontario and what our government is doing to provide support? Thank you.
And to reply, the Minister of Energy.
Thanks to the member opposite for the question, Mr. Speaker. Since we took government, we've been doing everything that we can to try and make life more affordable for the people of Ontario as the federal government continues to jack up the carbon tax year over year over year. You know, we brought in a number of initiatives, including removing 10 cents a litre off the price of gasoline, Mr. Speaker, bringing in the Ontario electricity rebate, lowering electricity bills by 15%, taking the tolls off highways, sending people back a rebate on their license plate sticker fees and eliminating those fees, Mr. Speaker, and so much more, the CARE and the LIFT and the staycation tax credits, just to name a few, Mr. Speaker. We've been trying our best to make life more affordable for the people of Ontario. The federal Liberals continue to drive up the carbon tax. These Ontario Liberals haven't learned a darn thing, Mr. Speaker. Liberals driving people into energy poverty at the federal level and the provincial level, and not only do these Liberals, not only are they happy with the current carbon tax, they want to see it triple by 2030.
Order. The supplementary question.
You won't have to write a letter.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for that response.
So damn good.
I was very pleased to see the strong leadership shown by our Premier at the recent Council of Federation meeting regarding the impact of the carbon tax. It was remarkable to see that premiers from NDP, Liberal and Conservative governments across Canada share the same view regarding the harmful impact that the carbon tax is having on our provinces and territories. Speaker, the collective support by premiers in calling on the federal government to remove the carbon tax on heating pumps and fairness for all Canadians confirms that this issue is creating significant burdens everywhere across this great country. That is why it is so astonishing that the Liberal and NDP members in this legislature continue to work against any efforts to make life more affordable for Ontarians. Speaker, can the minister please explain more about the negative impact that the carbon tax has on so many Ontarians? Thank you.
Minister of Energy.
Thanks again, Speaker, and thanks to the member opposite. for the question this morning. You know, it's about time that the federal Liberal government and our Ontario Liberal counterparts realize the impact that an increasing carbon tax is not just having on the price at the pumps, Mr. Speaker, but the impact it's having on inflation in our province, and it's impacting particularly people in rural Ontario and in the northern part of Ontario, but it's impacting everybody, Mr. Speaker. We're surrounded by police officers here this morning, Mr. Speaker. I can only imagine the impact that the carbon tax is having on our police services and our municipalities when they go to fill up their police cruisers to make sure our communities are safe. You know, we've heard from the Agriculture Minister on the impact it's having on the price of food because of increased cost on farmers, but these Liberals in Ontario are They are rock solid, Mr. Speaker, in their support of a federal carbon tax that's making it more expensive for the people of Ontario every single day.
The next question, the member for University Rosedale.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Premier. Last month, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing was asked about ministerial zoning orders. He said, and I quote, "What I'm concerned with are those MZOs that have led to no action being taken. The MZOs that I am pleased with, of course, are the ones that the Minister of Long-Term Care has asked for," unquote. Well, it turns out the Toronto Star looked at several MZOs issued for long-term care homes and found that in most cases there was no action being taken with them either. This includes MZOs issued for long-term care homes on government-owned land. My question is this: why is this minister so pleased that his MZOs are not getting long-term care homes built?
Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing.
I don't know what's going on here today, Mr. Speaker, because the member in her question highlights the exact reason why I'm bringing bills to the House to actually untangle the mess that was left behind by the NDP and the Liberals, right? So now, look, just the other day, we opened up the largest long-term care home, I think, in Ontario. And that was Welbeck Place. I have to thank Tess Romaine. She's doing a great job there. The largest long-term care home in the province there. Over 600 beds. Now, that was getting done because under the Liberals and the NDP, you will remember, colleagues, there were fewer homes built across the entire province in the 15 years that they governed together than that one home has in that one community, Mr. Speaker. But I have said I will remove the obstacles that municipalities are putting in the way of building long-term care. I thank you for your support of that. I will bring a bill forward to this House to make sure that long-term care homes get built across the province.
Thank you. And the supplementary question, member for London North Centre.
Good morning, Speaker. My question is back to the Premier. Last week, the Toronto Region Board of Trade's report warned that this government's changes to planning rules are putting 1.5 million jobs at risk. The Trillium reported that major Conservative Party donors successfully lobbied the former minister to punch a hole in Peel Region's employment zone plans, undermining the integrity of this crucial employment area against the recommendations of civil servants. When will the Premier stop putting jobs at risk and stop giving preferential treatment to his speculator friends?
Members, please take their seats. The Premier.
Mr. Speaker, is it the same Toronto Board of Trade that I went to that had overwhelming support on our policies of creating economic development, creating 700,000 jobs, making sure we're building new homes, we're getting shovels in the ground, we're going to hit our 1.5 million target. Now, Mr. Speaker, compared to the NDP and Liberals that lost 300,000 jobs, that didn't open up long-term care, didn't build hospitals, closed 600 schools, we're doing the opposite. We're building schools, building highways, building bridges, making sure that we get the infrastructure, the $184 billion we're spending in infrastructure to make sure we continue going, make sure we're a leader in North American economic development, job creation, and housing. But thank you for the question.
The next question, the member for Carleton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry. The carbon tax negatively impacts businesses in communities across my riding of Carleton in Ontario and especially in the north. For example, the punitive nature of the carbon tax leads to higher prices for raw materials. This will, in turn, mean increased prices for consumers on basic building materials like concrete and wood. Because of the carbon tax, Good companies like Carmoose, who operate a lime kiln near Blind River, are being negatively impacted. The majority of the carbon dioxide they produce is part of the process of turning limestone into lime. They have no other way to reduce those emissions. Speaker, through you, can the minister please share what impact the carbon tax is having on the natural resources sector and what actions our government is taking to support its continued growth? Thank you.
To apply for the government, the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Yet another example of how the carbon tax is hurting Ontarians. And, there's a better way. Of course, there are industries that can't help but produce CO2 in what they do to make our lives better every day. And you can have a carbon tax that's punitive against everyday individuals, or maybe you can go about it in a different way, like this government's gone about it, like this Premier, this Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, by supporting electric arc furnaces in Hamilton and Sault Ste. Marie, taking the equivalent of 2 million cars off the road. That's an incredible number, Mr. Speaker. Maybe you can go about it a different way in opening up the opportunities for carbon capture and storage in Ontario, like we're doing through my ministry, to make sure that that CO2 never hits the air and is safely stored for eternity, or provides options around green hydrogen. There are other ways, Speaker. It's called supporting business, not being punitive to the families in Ontario with a carbon tax that achieves absolutely nothing.
Supplementary question.
Thank you, Speaker, and through you, thank you to the Minister for the response. It's truly shocking to see that the independent Liberals and opposition NDP continue to support this punitive carbon tax that is making manufacturing materials so much more expensive. The carbon tax is raising the price of everything and impacting all industries throughout our province. This means fuel prices will increase, creating a chain reaction of rising costs throughout the economy. Any barrier that creates delays and financial hardships in this sector negatively impacts Ontario's growth and economic prosperity. Speaker, through you, can the minister please explain the impact of the carbon tax on the natural resources sector and what actions our government is taking in response? Thank you.
Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry.
Yeah, I have one word for the impact of the carbon tax on the natural resources sector. Terrible. Just as it's terrible for Ontarians. But here we are, Mr. Speaker, again, a government that's taking steps to make Ontario greener and cleaner. The Minister of Energy is expanding our nuclear fleet. The Minister of Mines is working on building that road to the Ring of Fire, which will extract those precious metals to support the EV battery capital of the world here in Ontario, Mr. Speaker. Thanks to the great work of our Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, and the support that this government has shown for what the future of automobiles will be. Mr. Speaker, there's so much opportunity to support businesses in Ontario. Through my ministry, our Forest Biomass Program, a $20 million program, is looking towards innovation, looking towards a green economy for use of wood products in medicine, bioplastics, 3D printing, biodiesel, even jet fuel. More emissions, fewer emissions, more jobs. Fewer emissions, more jobs, Mr. Speaker. It's that easy, and that's what innovation looks like. So this carbon tax, it's punitive. All it does is beat up the wallet. Well, we're not going to support it. We're going to support businesses here in Ontario.
The next question, the member for Windsor West.
Speaker, my question is to the Premier. The Toronto Star has begun releasing a series on the conditions impacting children in Ontario. They revealed there are nearly 30,000 children, those are kids under 18, on the wait list for mental health care in Ontario. Provincial funding levels are grossly inadequate and don't meet the needs of an increasing number of struggling children. Some kids wait up to 2 years for access to treatment. Some don't get it at all. Some experiencing mental health crisis go to an emergency department and get discharged a few days later without a treatment plan. Some return to hospital. Some self-harm, and some die by suicide. Premier, why is your government making children languish on wait lists for mental health support, and what do you have to say to the families who have lost a child to suicide while waiting for help?
The Associate Minister for Mental Health and Addictions.
Speaker, and thank you for that question. You know, we all know in this House that children and youth need accessible and reliable services if they're to grow into healthy adults. And that's why since 2019, $130 million has gone into children and youth mental health services via the Roadmap to Wellness. This includes, and in addition to, through the Roadmap, another $170 million over the next 3 years. In education, $90 million for school-based supports, and $20 million for an across-the-board 5% funding increase. In addition, we're extremely proud of our youth wellness hubs and the investments that we've made that are providing mental health and addiction, primary care, early interventions, and all on a walk-in basis, and the warm handoffs that result to community providers from them. Mr. Speaker, children and youth are our future, and our government is making and will continue to invest in them. Les enfants et les jeunes sont notre avenir.
Children and youth are our future, and our government will continue to invest for them and in them.
Question, the member for Hamilton Mountain.
Thank you, Speaker. Back to the Premier. In 2022, mental health disorders were the #1 reason for hospitalization among children and youth ages 5 to 17. So obviously, the roadmap is not working. After languishing for months or years on wait lists, vulnerable youth who turn 18 find themselves at the back of the line on an adult wait list. Our communities need urgent funding for long-stay beds, supportive living accommodations, and respite care, among other supports for children and their families dealing with mental illness. Supporting our youth mental health is not only the responsible thing to do, it is the right thing to do. Back to the Premier. When will his government properly fund community mental health programs to meet the growing needs in our communities?
Again, the Associate Minister for Mental Health and Addictions.
Mr. Speaker, and in fact, we have seen and will continue to make investments in children and youth because we know that those needs are there. The demographics show this, and we're making those investments. It's not just idle talk, it's actually investments on behalf of the government. In 2022, we invested another $31 million in new annual funding to reduce wait lists and support the mental health and well-being of children and youth. We're innovating on new ways to treat children and youth and new means for them to have access. $3.5 million step up, step down, live-in treatment programs, $2.1 million in virtual walk-in counselling, connecting youth to a clinician by phone, text, or video chat, $1 million children and youth telehealth services, $4.5 million one-stop talk virtual walk-in. These initiatives, Mr. Speaker, are working and they're making a difference. We're increasing access to supports. We're addressing the increased demands subsequent to the COVID pandemic. We're decreasing wait times, and we're improving the quality of care.
Did you hear what we said?
Thank you. The next question, the member for Ottawa-Vanier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is also for the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions. Mr. Speaker, consumption and treatment services sites have a role to play in harm reduction, but their implementation and specifically their placement need to be carefully considered. There are 4 of those consumption sites in the entire city of Ottawa, and 3 of them are located in my riding of Ottawa-Vanier, and they are all located within 600 meters of one another and right by the Byward Market. As a result of this cluster and the proximity to namely elementary schools, the surrounding community has been severely impacted. Residents have seen an increase in violence, thefts, open drug dealing, drug use, and people overdosing, which is even a bigger issue due to the high number of children attending school in the area. In fact, a daycare even had to close their door because they could no longer expose the children and the staff to the hardship created by the situation. My question to the minister is, can the minister explain how the concentration of these 3 consumption sites were allowed in this one area and what steps are being taken to limit the impacts on the community?
The Associate Minister for Mental Health and Addictions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, let me state it very, very clearly. For us, public safety is our primary concern. And as we said, there is an ongoing review with respect to the consumption and treatment sites in the province as a result of the tragic incident that occurred at Leslieville this summer. That review, Mr. Speaker, is going to help us determine the path forward and how we can better protect the people using the services in the communities where they're located. Again, public safety is a primary concern. Until the review is complete, decisions about the sites are on pause. I can, however, assure you that your concern is noted, and I would love to continue discussing that with you in terms of how this came to be and where things stand, and perhaps look at that specifically as part of that
response.
Process.
Thank you. The supplementary question.
I do appreciate the answer from the minister, and I want to underline that consumption sites have a role to play in addressing the opioid crisis, but the solution cannot end there. People who have challenges with addictions are healthcare patients needing treatment. Providing those who are addicted with a safe place to use drugs may protect them from overdose in the short term, but it does nothing to address the underlying illness. We need to take a holistic approach to addiction in this province. Last week, I did ask the Minister of Health to approve the request for a proposed nurse practitioner-led clinic that could provide much-needed addictions and mental health services. Consumption sites cannot be standalone facilities. They must be truly connected to healthcare and mental health treatment, food banks, housing, and other social services so that we can actually help address the underlying issues that lead to addictions. Mr. Speaker, what steps is the minister taking to ensure that the consumption sites in my riding actually connect to those who are addicted with the healthcare and social services that they need to get better?
The Associate Minister of Mental Health and Addictions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd invite the member opposite to take a look at the roadmap to wellness and look at the plan. We have been discussing, I have raised this and have said it many, many times in the House, the continuum of care requires there to be an entire and complete process within community. So when we talk about withdrawal management, when we talk about addiction treatment, when we talk about the supports that are required subsequent to that, including the housing. Now, this government, the first government to have a minister responsible for mental health and addiction, is looking at these problems from the standpoint of a multi-ministerial approach to ensure that the investments are there for the individual, so that once the treatment's completed, they have an opportunity to reintegrate into housing, a job, and everything else that the rest of us want in the province. That's what this government is doing, and we will continue doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, the member for Essex.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. Farmers in my community of Essex County are being punished because of the federal carbon tax. Many farmers need to use massive fans to dry down their crops in order to store them over long periods of time. If not properly dried, their grains and their corn will grow mold. Many of those fans are powered by natural gas, which is now subject to the federal carbon tax. Because of this regressive and crippling tax, farmers are having to pay additional costs of approximately $2,000 or $3,000 every year. Farmers in my community of Essex County need our government to stand with them and oppose this regressive and harmful tax. Speaker, can the minister please explain how the federal carbon tax is negatively impacting farmers in Essex County and across Ontario?
The Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I do appreciate the question because it allows us to shine a spotlight on the fact that the regressive, horrible carbon tax is pressing the farmers to no end. Ladies and gentlemen, the grain corn is coming off the fields. You know, in our farm, we harvested last weekend, and our corn ran at 23% moisture. And we were happy about that because it meant we would have to use less propane to dry down the corn so it wouldn't spoil in storage. And why does that matter? It matters because we want a good quality product that is food grade so we can be producing food close to home. But the member is absolutely right when he says the carbon tax is driving up the cost of doing business on farm because it's driving up the cost of drying our crops and it's driving up the cost of feeding our farms. Grain farmers of Ontario have said by the time the carbon tax triples in 2030, it's going to cost farmers $2.7 billion extra dollars. And who's ultimately going to pay that? Consumers.
The supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mo Chauvin and many other farmers in my community of Essex County are hardworking and dedicated people. Like so many other farmers in Ontario, Mo worked hard, he followed the rules, and he helped provide food for the people of our province. But because of the federal carbon tax, many farmers are being hurt financially. Many farmers now have to pay thousands of dollars more in natural gas bills because of the regressive and harmful federal carbon tax. That's not right, and it's simply not fair. That's why we need all members of this legislature, and especially the independent Liberals and the opposition NDP, to understand the financial pain that the federal carbon tax is causing on so many people. Speaker, can the minister please explain what impact the carbon tax is having on families in Ontario?
Order. Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs.
Simply put, Speaker, the impact of this regressive carbon tax that absolutely needs to be shelved is the cost of food across Ontario and across Canada, and it's making our businesses less competitive. You know, I had the honour of opening the Ontario Pavilion at the largest food show in North America on Monday in Chicago, the Private Label Show, and I was so proud of our Ontario businesses, from Georgetown to Newmarket and all places in between. When I spoke to them, they were doing their best, but they're concerned about their competitiveness because the cost of their products coming from the millers in terms of baked goods is going through the roof. Why? Because that carbon tax is making its way through every step of the value chain. So I would respectfully submit to the independent Liberals, they need to jump in their minivan, drive to Ottawa, and tell those senators to stop playing games and vote and support C-234.
Thank you. The next question. Order. The member for Toronto Centre.
Thank you, Speaker. This government is failing to adequately staff Toronto's newest Ontario Court of Justice facility. In September, a man charged with sexually assaulting a minor walked free because his case took too long to get to trial. Last week, another sexual assault charge against a rapist was stayed, and his case was also thrown out because of the long court delay. What a waste of Toronto police resources. Speaker, despite this government's claim that they are fixing the courts, the Ministry of the Attorney General saw a base funding cut in the fall economic statement. How is the Premier justifying funding cuts to the court system when he is already failing survivors?
And to reply, the Attorney General.
Speaker, it's so rich coming from that member from that party, Mr. Speaker.
Anti-police.
I want to say, when we put $6 million to increase staffing, these members voted against it, Mr. Speaker. When we put $72 million for the criminal case backlog, these members did not support it, Mr. Speaker. When we talk about funding the police, they say defund the police. When we say support victims, they say build the administration. When we say we want to modernize, they say, no, we like our fax machines, Mr. Speaker. I'll take no lessons from that member from that party.
Order. The supplementary question.
Despite the political spin, what we do know is that there is a base funding cut from this ministry. In this incident, Judge Brock Jones said, there is no reason for this case to have not been completed had the courts been properly staffed. Instead of 2 full days of court time, they were wasted and the case was adjourned. In an interview with CTV, Speaker, Emily of Fergus, Ontario, the survivor was devastated after her case was tossed, and she shared this comment. I crumbled, she said. It took so much to even do that first step of giving my statement to the police and then going to the hospital. Then, after a year and a half, I decided to go back to Toronto and face the trial, face this man and tell my story. Now it's over. Speaker, what does the Premier have to say to Emily and all the survivors seeking justice after allowing their rapists to walk free?
To reply, the Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will reiterate that any lost trial, any closed courtroom is not acceptable to this government. That is why we are picking up the pieces that were left behind by this group and this group, Mr. Speaker, because although they feign concern, Mr. Speaker, they're just chasing headlines and politicizing people's tragedies, Mr. Speaker. They're doing nothing. While we're standing up for the people of Ontario, they sit on their hands. Every time we vote to support resources, modernization, the police, technology, Mr. Speaker, improving classification of workers, everything that we're doing, they're sitting on their hands. So, Mr. Speaker, they manifest change, but they do nothing.
The next question, the member for Haldeman Norfolk.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Agriculture. At the beginning of October, the beef farmers were here for their annual lobby day. And during question period, the member from Peterborough-Kawartha lobbed a question over to the minister, asking how the government is ensuring the beef sector continues to fuel the economy. The minister reiterated contributions beef farmers make, but made no mention of the requested $100 million bump up to the risk management program, the #1 reason the beef farmers were here that day. RMP not only benefits beef, but also fruit, vegetable, grain, hort, oilseed lamb, veal and pork producers. Speaker, that same day the minister said, and I quote, "Ontario beef farmers understand that they finally have a government that listens and understands." And this morning we keep hearing about the carbon tax and how it is hurting our farmers, and yet it is indeed regressive and unfair, but there's a saying where I come from. Maybe you should stick to your knitting, because this government has an avenue, it has an opportunity to support our farmers. Speaker, if this government and the minister have listened and understood, why haven't Ontario farmers seen an increase to RMP?
Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs.
Very much. Well, Speaker, I'd like to share with the member opposite that it's our government, under the leadership of Premier Ford, that listened to the beef farmers and all of our commodity organizations in our coalition that were asking for support. And when we came into power in 2018, we listened, and we responded by increasing the risk management program. And that program is working. That program has done so well. I can tell you with absolute certainty that our grain farmers of Ontario were kept whole because of the progressiveness and the assertiveness we've addressed that program with. And beef farmers of Ontario have benefited from the manner in which the risk management program is being facilitated in this province, and actually that worked for them this year, and they're being kept whole. And Speaker, I can't wait till next Monday when I make an announcement that absolutely demonstrates how we continue to support farmers in Ontario.
Supplementary question.
Thank you, Speaker. No commitment from this government this morning, but you know who are committed? Our farmers, committed to feeding all of us and ensuring Ontarians have access to safe, healthy, top-quality food. And what we've heard again this morning is the minister cherry-picking items we've already heard, but refusing to acknowledge the biggest concern of most of our farmers, a concern that, if addressed, would help support succession planning and give farm families the confidence to weather an often fluctuating and unstable environment. The return on investment is highly profitable. For every dollar paid through RMP and SDRM, gross economic output is increased by between $2 and $3.60. We need the next generation of farmers to take responsibility for producing food, and the RMP program plays a critical role in ensuring that will happen. Speaker, when will the minister strengthen Ontario's food security and the sustainability of the ag sectors by increasing RMP funding to $250 million?
Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I can give the member opposite certainty when I say we have an amazing working relationship with the coalition that receives support through the risk management program. And we continue to listen, and we continue to work towards programs that make sense. And I can tell you, what we've done to date is putting our farmers in the best position possible to be competitive, not only across Canada and North America, but around the world. And ladies and gentlemen, I can't wait to share our announcement on Monday as a perfect example of how our government continues to listen, and we continue to get the job done for Ontario farmers. Thank you very much.
The next question, the member for Hastings, Lennox and Adams.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Energy. With the carbon tax set to increase rapidly by 2030, this will mean substantial increases in the cost of heat, gas and grocery bills for hardworking individuals and families. Some areas, Speaker, in rural sometimes the mouth doesn't work. In rural and Northern Ontario, families are struggling to keep the heat on. Some areas of this province, temperature can drop to -30 in the winter. So increasing the carbon tax will only mean higher expenses at a time when Ontario families are already struggling because of the high interest rates. For those of us who live in Ontario's rural, remote and northern communities, the effects of the carbon tax are disastrous. It's not fair or right that rural and northern Ontarians are being forced to pay more because of where they live. So, Speaker, can the minister please share his views on the disparity of the federal carbon tax and its negative impact on the rural people of Ontario?
Minister of Energy.
To my colleague, the member from Hastings, Lennox and Addington, and my neighbour in Eastern Ontario as well, you know what else doesn't work? Federal carbon tax. It doesn't work for anybody. It doesn't even work for the federal government, Mr. Speaker. The federal government told us when they implemented the carbon tax that it was going to reduce emissions and that people were going to get back more than they put in through the carbon tax rebate. We now know that both of those things aren't true, Mr. Speaker. The Bank of Canada has confirmed that the carbon tax is driving up inflation across our province, making things more expensive, and we now know that a federal agency, the Commissioner of the Environment, has reported that the federal government is going to miss their own emissions targets, Mr. Speaker. So what have we accomplished here? All we have accomplished with the federal carbon tax is driving people into energy poverty, Mr. Speaker. They didn't drive down emissions.
Response.
They drove up the cost of everything. They're 0 for 2, Mr. Speaker. It's time to scrap this tax.
The supplementary question.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Minister. I have to agree. The carbon tax is driving up the cost of utilities as it is driving up the cost of everything else. People across this province are struggling. Life is more unaffordable today because of the imposition of the federal carbon tax. While the federal government recognizes the hardship that this tax is causing for Atlantic Canadians, apparently they fail to understand that many individuals and families across Ontario are also struggling. By exempting only the heating oil from Atlantic Canada from that carbon tax, the federal government sends a strong message that not everyone is being treated equally. The people of Ontario should not be punished by this regressive and harmful tax, while other provinces are being exempted. Speaker, can the minister please share his views about the far-reaching negative impact that this regressive carbon tax is having on the lives of so many Ontarians?
Minister of Energy can reply.
Speaker, we've been clear since day one that the carbon tax wasn't going to be effective. We fought the federal government all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada on this issue, Mr. Speaker. We know that the federal carbon tax is just driving up the cost of everything. It's making it more expensive for that mom taking her kids to hockey practice. It's making it more expensive for our local police services to operate because the price of rolling vehicles through our streets to make sure they're safe is driving up the costs for them. For people that are heating their home, Mr. Speaker, this is having a negative impact. The federal government chose to carve out Atlantic Canada from the carbon tax, Mr. Speaker, yet the federal Liberal caucus makes up half of their caucus in Ottawa, Mr. Speaker. Why are they not carving out home heating costs for the people of Ontario, Mr. Speaker? It's a very, very fair question. And why is the Ontario Liberal caucus, as small as it is, continuing to support their federal cousins in Ottawa? It's time to scrap this tax once and for all.
The next question, the member for Scarborough Southwest.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, my question is to the Premier. A new report released by the Daily Bread Food Bank and North York Harvest found that 1 in 10 people in Toronto are now making use of food banks. Speaker, that is double the rate of 2022. There are over 2.5 million visits in the past year to food banks in Toronto alone, a 51% increase. Food banks across Ontario are reporting similar increases as well. Speaker, it is clear that we are facing a food insecurity crisis in this province. Food banks themselves know that distributing food will not solve the issue. Food insecurity is a public policy issue requiring public policy solutions. So, Speaker, my question to the Premier is, how is this government going to address the growing food insecurity crisis in Ontario?
Minister of Children, Community and Social Services.
Thanks very much, Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for that very important question. Mr. Speaker, I can tell you, with the rising cost of everything now in the province, we know that the people are feeling, which is why the Minister of Energy clearly mentioned that we need to do better at all levels of government to make sure we get rid of the punishing carbon tax that adds a cost to everything, Mr. Speaker. I can tell you, as a government, through a $96 million investments that we're making through the Ontario Trillium Foundation to community partners, including food banks, Mr. Speaker. On top of that, for our students, so that students don't go hungry, Mr. Speaker, we increased the student nutrition program. We raised the minimum wage. We're removing tolls from highways. We kept the 10% savings at the gas pumps. Mr. Speaker, we are making life more affordable for Ontarians at a time when we know life is more unaffordable. We ask the opposition to support us in this, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary question.
Speaker, food banks are not the solutions. We need a public policy solution, and the minister knows that. The 2023 Daily Bread Food Bank report also shows that there has been a 36% increase of people relying on food banks in my community of Scarborough. People just simply do not have enough. They're working multiple jobs, and they do not have money left over after they pay their rent or other bills. People just do not make enough, even after working multiple jobs, to pay for food. That's the reality in this province, Speaker. Why is the government turning a blind eye to the surge in Scarborough residents and residents across this province who are resorting to food banks due to the soaring cost of living?
Minister of Children, Community and Social Services.
I think I mentioned in my first response, Mr. Speaker, that we are there to provide the supports for Ontarians who need it. But you know what I can tell you, Mr. Speaker? I thank the Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, who is going out to bring those high-paying, good jobs to the people of this province, Mr. Speaker. We don't want people to be in poverty. We will fight for them to make sure that they have more income, bigger paychecks, Mr. Speaker. Now, again, the supports will be there for Ontarians who need it, but under the leadership of Premier Ford, the manufacturing jobs, those good-paying jobs who left the province of Ontario are coming back thanks to this Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, Mr. Speaker. So, again, I ask my colleagues across to work with us, to ask the federal government to remove the punishing carbon tax that adds the cost of everything in this province, Mr. Speaker, and let life be more.
The next question, the member for Peterborough-Kawartha.
Thank you, Speaker. I have a question for the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry. Oh, great. When I was back in the riding last week, I heard repeatedly how the federal carbon tax is making life more unaffordable for people. Carbon tax is increasing the cost of everything for the people in my riding. The fuel in their cars, groceries they buy, and the electricity they need to heat their homes. Many individuals and families have also told me that the carbon tax is even making hunting, fishing, and traveling in rural, remote, and northern parts of our province too expensive. It's not right, and it's not fair that this regressive tax negatively impacts the quality of life for so many people in Ontario.
That's right.
Speaker, can the minister please explain about the negative impact that the carbon tax is having on so many households and how it's impacting the cost of living for so many?
Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry.
Thanks so much, Speaker, and I appreciate the question. You know, in Northern Ontario, hunting and fishing is a way of life. It's actually a pastime for many people all throughout Ontario that want to enjoy that. And, of course, now when they want to try and do it, well, the family loads into the truck. They want to go to the camp. They got to stop at the gas station. They get to pay some carbon tax. They get to fill up the gas tanks to run the Jenny at the hunt camp. They get to pay carbon tax. I mean, this tax is really, it's just part of everything we do now, and it is providing absolutely no positive benefit. You know, if the Liberals want to help out our friends across the world, maybe they should spend some time not kneecapping each other during their leadership race and trying to find productive ways to talk about how to get rid of the carbon tax once somebody gets to be the leader that gets to drive the van.
The supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, my question is for the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry. The carbon tax will only worsen. The cost is expected to nearly triple by 2030. This will mean that fuel prices will increase, creating a ripple throughout the economy and raising the cost of absolutely everything. This is only making life harder and more expensive for people living on a budget, like our seniors, or for our families throughout Ontario. This is especially true for people living in Northern Ontario who have a greater reliance on their vehicles for transportation. Speaker, can the minister please explain how the carbon tax impacts people in Ontario's rural, remote and northern communities?
Good question. Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry.
3 words, Mr. Speaker: outrageous, egregious, preposterous.
Thank you. That concludes our question period for this morning. Pursuant to Standing Order 36A, the member for Toronto Centre has given notice of their dissatisfaction with the answer to their question given by the Attorney General concerning long court delays. This matter will be debated today following private members' public business. Order. This House stands in recess until 1 p.m.